Part 1. The exile rain fell softly on the ancient stones as Ember pressed deeper into the shadowy caves. The dragon's massive claws scraped against rock worn smooth by countless years of wind and water. Each step echoed through the empty chambers like a heartbeat in the dark. The pendant around Ember's neck caught what little light filtered through the cave mouth, casting strange symbols on the walls that danced with every movement. The crystal peaks felt like a lifetime away now, though it had only been 3 days since the Dragon Council's final judgment. Ember could still hear Elder Granite's voice booming across the Great Hall, declaring the sentence that would change everything forever. "You are no longer welcome among your own kind," the ancient dragon had said, his golden eyes cold as winter ice. "Your weakness brings shame to our noble race. Weakness." The word stung worse than any physical wound. Ember had tried to explain that feeling the pain and joy of other creatures was not weakness, but the council would not listen. When Ember had saved a family of star foxes from a rock slide, the other dragons called it foolish. When Ember had healed a wounded explorer from the outer colonies, they called it disgraceful. A dragon was meant to be feared and respected, not loved and trusted. The cave opened into a larger chamber and Ember settled onto the cool stone floor. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky like the angry voices of the council members. Lightning flashed, showing glimpses of a world that seemed as lonely as Ember felt inside. The pendant grew warm against the dragon's chest as if responding to the deep sadness that filled the ancient heart. Ember thought back to happier times, when being different had not seemed so terrible. As a young dragon barely larger than a house, Ember had discovered the strange gift by accident. A small creature had fallen from its nest during a storm, and something inside Ember had reached out, sensing the tiny animal's fear and pain. Without thinking, the young dragon had gently lifted the creature back to safety. The feeling of its relief and gratitude had been like warm sunlight on a cold day. But as Ember grew larger and older, the other dragons began to notice these acts of kindness. They whispered behind scaled backs about the dragon who was too soft and too caring. The whispers became complaints, and the complaints became demands for action. The final straw had come when Ember had refused to burn down a village that had accidentally disturbed a dragon burial ground. Instead of fire and destruction, Ember had simply spoken to the villagers, explaining the sacred nature of the site. They had apologized and moved their settlement elsewhere, but the council saw this as weakness and betrayal of dragon tradition. Now, sitting alone in a cave on a distant world, Ember wondered if the council had been right. Perhaps caring too much about other creatures was wrong for a dragon. Perhaps the ancient ways of fear and dominance were the only path for their kind. The pendant seemed to pulse with a gentle light, as if disagreeing with these dark thoughts. But Ember was too tired and hurt to pay attention to its silent message. The world outside was called Haven's Rest, according to the star charts Ember had studied before landing. It was a small colony world, far from the major space routes and busy trade centers. The humans who lived here were farmers and craftspeople, simple folk who wanted only to live in peace. They had built their settlements in the green valleys, leaving the rocky highlands and ancient ruins untouched. It seemed like the perfect place for an unwanted dragon to hide. As the storm began to fade, Ember moved deeper into the cave system. The ruins above had once been home to an ancient civilization, long gone now but leaving behind beautiful stone buildings and mysterious carvings. The caves beneath were natural, carved by underground rivers that had dried up ages ago. They were large enough for even a full-grown dragon to move comfortably, and they connected to several other chambers that could serve as sleeping areas and storage spaces. In one of the larger chambers, Ember found evidence of the ancient people who had once lived here. Strange symbols covered the walls, telling stories of their daily lives and great achievements. Some of the symbols looked similar to the ones on the pendant, though Ember could not read either language. The dragon had always been curious about ancient writing and lost civilizations, another trait that the council had found strange and unworthy. Ember settled into the chamber that felt most welcoming, arranging some loose stones into a more comfortable sleeping area. The pendant continued to glow softly, its light reflecting off the cave walls and creating patterns that seemed almost alive. Sometimes Ember thought the pendant was trying to communicate, but dragons had lost the ability to read the true language centuries ago. It was said that only those with pure hearts and open minds could understand its messages, but Ember had never met anyone with such abilities. The loneliness, was the hardest part. Dragons were not meant to live alone, despite their reputation for being solitary creatures. In the Crystal Peaks, Ember had always been surrounded by other dragons, even if they did not approve of the unusual behavior. There had been voices to hear, stories to share, and the comfort of belonging to something larger than oneself. Here in the cave, there was only silence and the echo of Ember's own breathing. As night fell completely, Ember tried to sleep, but found rest difficult to achieve. The pendant seemed to grow brighter in the darkness, and strange dreams filled the dragon's mind. In these dreams, Ember saw visions of friendship and understanding between different species, of dragons working alongside humans and other creatures to build something beautiful and lasting. But when morning came, the dreams faded like mist, leaving only the cold reality of exile and abandonment. The first week passed slowly. Ember learned the patterns of the human settlement below, watching from a distance as they went about their daily lives. They seemed happy and peaceful, working together to tend their crops and care for their families. Children played in the fields while adults repaired buildings and shared meals together. It was the kind of community that Ember had always dreamed of joining, but knew could never be part of. Sometimes Ember wondered what would happen if the humans discovered a dragon living in the ruins above their homes. Would they flee in terror, or would they try to drive away the unwanted visitor? Either reaction would be understandable, but both would mean more loneliness and the need to find another hiding place. For now, it seemed best to remain hidden and hope that the pendant's gentle light could somehow ease the ache of being truly alone for the first time in a very long life. Sunlight danced through the broken windows of the ancient library as Ben Carter climbed carefully over a fallen stone beam. His backpack bounced against his shoulders with each step, filled with interesting rocks and old metal pieces he had found during his morning exploration. The 10-year-old boy loved discovering new things in the ruins above his family's farm, especially on days when his chores were finished early and his parents thought he was playing near the barn. Ben had been exploring these ruins for almost 2 years now, ever since his family had moved to Haven's Rest. His father grew vegetables and grain in the fertile valley below, while his mother ran a small shop that sold supplies to other farming families. They were good people who worked hard and treated their neighbors with kindness, but they worried too much about Ben wandering far from home. They did not understand his deep curiosity about the ancient buildings and mysterious carvings that covered the hilltops around their settlement. Today felt different somehow. Ben had noticed strange scratches in the dirt near the old temple, marks that looked too large to be made by any of the local animals. He had also found several scales scattered among the rocks, each one bigger than his hand and colored like polished copper with edges of gold. They were beautiful but puzzling, unlike anything he had seen in his nature books or heard described by the older colonists. As Ben moved deeper into the ruins, following a trail of disturbed stones and bent grass, he heard something that made him stop and listen carefully. It was a sound like deep breathing, slow and steady, coming from somewhere beneath his feet. The ground here was different too, with cracks and openings that suggested caves or tunnels running under the ancient buildings. Ben had always wanted to explore the underground areas, but his parents had made him promise never to go into dark places alone. But this was not really breaking his promise. Ben reasoned with himself because he could still see daylight and hear the wind in the trees above. He found a wide crack between 2 stone slabs and peered down into the shadows below. His eyes took a moment to adjust, but then he saw something that made his heart race with excitement and wonder, rather than fear. A dragon was sleeping in the chamber below, curled up like a giant cat on a bed of arranged stones. Its scales shimmered in the dim light that filtered down from above, and Ben could see the slow rise and fall of its massive chest as it breathed. Around the dragon's neck hung a pendant that glowed with soft blue light, covered in symbols that seemed to move and change as Ben watched them. Ben had read every book about dragons that he could find in the colony's small library. Most of them described dragons as fierce and dangerous creatures that breathed fire and hoarded treasure in distant caves. But this dragon looked sad rather than scary, and Ben felt a strange urge to help rather than run away. Something about the way the great creature slept, with its head resting on its front claws and its wings folded protectively around its body, reminded Ben of his own feelings when he was lonely or hurt. Very quietly, Ben climbed down through the crack and into the cave chamber. The dragon continued to sleep, though its breathing seemed less peaceful now, as if it was having troubled dreams. Ben moved closer, fascinated by the intricate patterns of the scales and the way the pendant's light played across the cave walls. The symbols on the pendant were like nothing he had ever seen before, but something about them felt familiar, as if he had encountered similar markings in his dreams. Ben had always been good with languages and symbols. His teacher said he had a natural gift for understanding how different forms of writing worked, even when he had never seen them before. He could read the old colony records that were written in 3 different Earth languages, and he had taught himself to understand the trade pidgin that visiting merchants sometimes used. The symbols on the dragon's pendant seemed to call out to him in the same way, begging to be understood and translated. As Ben leaned closer to get a better look at the pendant, the dragon's eyes suddenly opened. They were large and golden, like pools of liquid sunlight, and they looked directly at Ben with an expression of complete surprise. For a moment, neither the boy nor the dragon moved, each trying to understand what was happening. Then the dragon spoke, its voice deep and musical like distant thunder mixed with wind chimes. "You should not be here, small human," it said gently. "I am dangerous to your kind." But Ben did not feel afraid, even though he was standing next to a creature that could easily swallow him in one bite. Instead, he felt the same excitement he always experienced when discovering something new and wonderful. "You don't seem dangerous to me," he said, his young voice echoing slightly in the stone chamber. "You seem sad. Are you hurt?" The dragon blinked in confusion, clearly not expecting such a response. "I am not hurt in body," it said slowly, as if choosing each word carefully. "But yes, I suppose I am sad. I have been sent away from my home and family. I am alone now." Ben understood loneliness all too well. Moving to Haven's Rest had meant leaving behind all his friends from their previous home, and making new friends in a small farming community was not easy for a boy who preferred reading ancient histories to playing sports. "Being alone is really hard," he said with sincere sympathy. "I'm sorry that happened to you. What's your name?" "I am called Ember," the dragon replied, seeming surprised by the boy's kindness. "And you, small human? What are you called, and why do you show no fear of me?" "I'm Ben," the boy said with a smile. "And I'm not afraid because you haven't given me any reason to be afraid. Besides, I think you're the most amazing thing I've ever seen." He pointed at the pendant around Ember's neck. "That's really beautiful. What do those symbols mean?" Ember looked down at the pendant with a mixture of sadness and confusion. "I do not know," the dragon admitted. "It was given to me by my grandmother when I was very young, but the ability to read the true language was lost to my people long ago. She said it contained an important message, but I have never been able to understand what it says." Ben felt his excitement growing stronger. This was exactly the kind of mystery he loved to solve, and something told him that this pendant was more important than either he or Ember realized. "Could I try to read it?" he asked hopefully. "I'm really good with languages and old writing systems. Maybe I can figure out what it says." Ember hesitated for a long moment, clearly torn between hope and doubt. Finally, the dragon lowered its great head so that the pendant was closer to Ben's eye level. "You may try, young Ben, though I warn you that many scholars of my people have failed to understand these symbols." Ben studied the pendant carefully, tracing the symbols with his finger without actually touching the glowing surface. As he focused his attention on the ancient writing, something remarkable began to happen. The symbols seemed to become clearer and more familiar, as if a fog was lifting from his mind. He could almost hear words forming, ancient words that spoke of prophecy and hope and the bridging of worlds. "I think," Ben said slowly, his voice filled with wonder, "I think I can read some of it. This symbol here means understanding, and this one means bridge or connection. And this part, I think it says something about 2 worlds coming together through friendship." Ember's golden eyes grew wide with amazement. In all the years since receiving the pendant, no one had been able to read even a single symbol. Now this human child was translating entire concepts as if the ancient language was as familiar as his native tongue. "How is this possible?" Ember whispered. Ben looked up at the dragon with bright, curious eyes. "I don't know how, but I can feel the meaning of the words, like they're trying to tell me something important. Do you want me to keep reading?" For the first time in weeks, Ember felt a spark of hope kindle in the depths of despair. Perhaps being exiled to this distant world had not been a punishment after all, but the first step toward discovering something wonderful and unexpected. 3 weeks had passed since Ben's first visit to the hidden cave, and the ancient ruins had become his favorite place in the entire world. Every day after finishing his morning chores on the farm, he would pack a small lunch and climb up the winding path to spend time with his unlikely friend. His parents thought he was simply exploring and collecting interesting rocks, which was partly true, but they had no idea about the magnificent dragon who had become the most important part of his daily routine. Ember looked forward to these visits with an eagerness that surprised the ancient dragon. For centuries, Ember had lived among others of the same species, but never had there been such easy friendship and genuine curiosity, as Ben showed every single day. The boy would arrive each morning with questions about dragon culture, stories from the human settlement, and always a willingness to work on translating more of the mysterious pendant. Ben had made remarkable progress with the ancient writing. Each day he could read a little more of the glowing symbols, and each new translation revealed something wonderful about Ember's true nature and purpose. The pendant told a story of a dragon who would be different from all others, blessed with the ability to understand and connect with creatures from many worlds. It spoke of this dragon as a bridge between species, a healer of old wounds, and a bringer of new hope. "Listen to this part," Ben said excitedly as he sat cross-legged on the smooth cave floor, studying the pendant while Ember arranged their lunch on a flat rock. "It says something about, 'The one who feels the hearts of others will teach the proud to love and the fearful to trust.' That sounds like it's talking about you." Ember paused in the careful arrangement of the berries and vegetables Ben had brought to share. "The Dragon Council would not agree with such words," the dragon said softly. "They believe my ability to sense the emotions of other creatures makes me weak and unsuitable to carry on dragon traditions." "But that's so wrong," Ben said with the passionate certainty that only children can possess. "Your empathy makes you special, not weak. You've told me how you can sense when animals are hurt or afraid, and how you can help them feel better. That's like having a superpower that most people only dream about." Over the past weeks, Ben had learned many things about his dragon friend that filled him with wonder and admiration. Ember could indeed sense the emotional states of other living creatures, feeling their pain, fear, joy, or contentment, as if those emotions were echoes in the dragon's own heart. This gift had led Ember to become a natural healer, able to calm frightened animals and ease the suffering of injured creatures with a gentle touch and soothing presence. Ben had witnessed this gift firsthand, when they had found a family of tunnel rabbits trapped in a collapsed burrow. While Ben had worked to carefully clear away the fallen rocks, Ember had projected feelings of safety and comfort to the terrified animals, keeping them calm until they could be freed. The gratitude and relief that the rabbit family had shown toward their rescuer had been beautiful to see, and Ben understood why such experiences had shaped Ember into a creature of compassion rather than conquest. "Sometimes I wonder if you were sent here for a reason," Ben said thoughtfully as they shared their simple meal. "Maybe the Dragon Council thought they were punishing you, but really they were helping you find where you truly belong." Ember considered this possibility while watching Ben carefully feed small pieces of fruit to a curious tree squirrel that had become brave enough to approach their daily picnics. The boy had such a natural way with animals, treating even the smallest creatures with respect and kindness. It reminded Ember of their own approach to other living beings, and it was comforting to find such understanding in someone so young. "There is something I must tell you," Ember said with a serious tone that made Ben look up from the squirrel with immediate attention. "The settlement where you live has been protected these past weeks, though the people do not know it." Ben's eyes grew wide with curiosity and concern. "Protected from what?" "Shadow wolves," Ember explained. "They are not native to this world, but sometimes they follow space travelers and establish packs on new planets. They hunt in groups and are very dangerous to your people's livestock, and even to humans who venture out alone at night. A pack of them arrived shortly after I came here, drawn by the scent of the farm animals in the valley." Ben felt a chill of fear run down his spine. He had heard the adults talking about strange howling sounds at night and some missing animals from the outer farms, but no one had known what was causing the problems. "Have you been fighting them?" he asked. "Not fighting," Ember said with a slight smile. "I have been convincing them to hunt elsewhere. Shadow wolves are intelligent creatures and they can sense when they are outmatched. A few demonstrations of dragonfire in their territory has encouraged them to seek easier prey on the other side of the continent." Ben felt a surge of pride and gratitude for his friend's protective actions. "So you've been keeping everyone safe even though they don't know you exist. That's so brave and good of you." It felt natural to protect those who cannot protect themselves, Ember said simply. Your people seem kind and peaceful. They do not deserve to suffer because of my presence here. This conversation helped Ben understand something important about the Pendant's message. Ember was already fulfilling the prophecy described in the ancient writing, serving as a bridge between species by protecting humans from creatures they could not handle alone. The dragon's empathic abilities allowed for communication with the shadow wolves, while Ember's strength provided the deterrent needed to keep the farming community safe. As the days continued to pass, Ben found himself learning not just about dragon culture and ancient languages, but about what it truly meant to be brave and compassionate. Ember shared stories of life in the Crystal Peaks, describing the beauty of dragon cities built into mountain faces and the ancient traditions that had guided dragon society for thousands of years. But Ember also spoke honestly about the loneliness of being different and the pain of being rejected by one's own people for refusing to fit into expected roles. Do you ever think about going back? Ben asked one afternoon as they watched clouds drift past the cave entrance. Ember was quiet for a long moment before answering. Sometimes I dream about returning to show them that being different can also mean being valuable. But I am no longer the same dragon who was exiled from the Crystal Peaks. These weeks of friendship with you have changed me in ways that I am still discovering. Ben smiled at this admission. You've changed me too. Before I met you, I felt like I was the only one who cared about old stories and ancient mysteries. Now I know that curiosity and empathy are gifts to be proud of, not things to hide. Their friendship had grown into something that neither species was supposed to be capable of. According to the old stories and traditional beliefs, dragons were meant to be solitary and fierce, while humans were meant to fear and avoid such powerful creatures. But Ben and Ember had discovered that understanding and acceptance could bridge any gap, creating bonds stronger than the prejudices of their respective cultures. The pendant seemed to glow brighter each day, as if responding to the growing connection between the unlikely friends. Ben had now translated almost half of its message, and each new section revealed more about the special destiny that had brought them together. According to the ancient prophecy, their friendship was just the beginning of something much larger and more important than either of them had imagined. As Ben prepared to return home before his parents began to worry about his whereabouts, he turned back to Ember with a determined expression. Tomorrow I want to try reading the biggest section of symbols, the ones in the center of the pendant. I think they might tell us exactly why you were given this gift and what we're supposed to do with it. Ember nodded with anticipation and growing confidence. For the first time since leaving the Crystal Peaks, the dragon felt truly hopeful about the future and eager to discover what destiny awaited them both. The morning started like any other, with Ben climbing the familiar path to the ancient ruins while carrying his usual backpack filled with food and curiosity. But something felt wrong as he approached the hidden entrance to Ember's cave. The air was too quiet, with none of the usual sounds of birds or small creatures moving through the grass. Even more concerning, Ben could see strange marks in the dirt that looked like boot prints from heavy military-style footwear. Ben's heart began to race as he carefully approached the crack in the stones that served as his secret doorway to the underground chambers. Before he could climb down into the cave, rough hands grabbed him from behind and lifted him off his feet. A tall man in dark clothing held Ben firmly while two other figures emerged from their hiding spots among the ruins. Well, said the woman who appeared to be their leader, her voice cold and calculating. Just as our sources predicted, the soft-hearted dragon has made friends with a local human child. How perfectly convenient for our purposes. Ben struggled against the man's grip, but the hunter was much stronger and had no trouble keeping the boy restrained. Let me go, Ben shouted, hoping that Ember would hear his voice and know that something was wrong. I haven't done anything to you. The leader smiled without any warmth or kindness. You haven't done anything wrong, boy. You're simply going to help us catch a very valuable dragon. My name is Captain Stone, and we are professional dragon hunters. We've been tracking this particular specimen across 3 star systems. From inside the cave came a sound like rumbling thunder, and Ben knew that Ember had heard the commotion above. The dragon's voice echoed up through the stone passages filled with anger and concern. Release the child, humans. Your quarrel is with me, not with him. Captain Stone laughed at this response. Exactly the reaction we were hoping for. You see, boy, most dragons are proud and selfish creatures who care nothing for other species. But this one is different. This one actually cares about the welfare of lesser beings, which makes it predictable and easy to manipulate. Ben felt a surge of anger at hearing Ember described as lesser or predictable. His dragon friend was the most noble and caring creature he had ever met, and these hunters had no right to speak about Ember with such disrespect. "Ember is worth more than all of you put together," he said defiantly. "Ember?" Captain Stone raised an eyebrow with interest. "So the dragon has even told you its name. How touching. I'm sure you'll make excellent bait for drawing it out into the open where we can capture it properly." The hunters had clearly done their research about Ember's unusual nature. They had brought specialized equipment designed to contain and transport a dragon, including energy nets that could expand to cover even the largest specimens and restraint collars that would prevent the use of dragon fire or flight. Ben could see their transport ship parked in a clearing not far from the ruins, its cargo hold already prepared for a very unwilling passenger. As the hunters began to set up their trap, Ben noticed something strange happening to the pendant hidden beneath his shirt. His grandmother had given him a small translation crystal before his family moved to Haven's Rest, telling him it would help him understand ancient languages and symbols. Ben had been wearing it every day since he started working on Ember's pendant, but now it was growing warm against his chest and beginning to glow with the same blue light as the dragon's pendant. "You're making a big mistake," Ben called out to Captain Stone as she directed her men to position their capture equipment. "Ember isn't just any dragon. The pendant around Ember's neck contains a prophecy, and I've been learning to read it. It says that Ember is supposed to bring different species together in friendship and understanding." Captain Stone paused in her preparations and looked at Ben with sudden interest. "A prophecy pendant? Now that is valuable indeed. Dragon prophecies are worth 10 times more than a single captured dragon on the black market. Tell me more about what this pendant says, boy." But Ben had no intention of helping these hunters profit from Ember's sacred pendant. Instead, he closed his eyes and concentrated on the warm crystal against his chest, trying to remember every symbol and word that he had translated over the past weeks. As he focused his mind on the pendant's message, something extraordinary began to happen. The translation crystal around Ben's neck suddenly blazed with brilliant light, so bright that the hunters had to shield their eyes. At the same moment, Ben felt his mind expand and connect with something vast and ancient. He could sense Ember's presence more clearly than ever before, feeling the dragon's emotions as if they were his own thoughts and understanding Ember's words, as if they were speaking the same language. "Ben." Ember's voice came not through the air but directly into the boy's mind. "The pendant's true power is awakening. Can you hear my thoughts?" Ben concentrated harder, and suddenly he could not only hear Ember's mental voice but could respond in the same way. "Yes, I can hear you. The crystal my grandmother gave me is connecting us somehow. Are you all right down there?" "I am unharmed but trapped," Ember replied through their new telepathic link. "The hunters have blocked all the cave entrances with their energy barriers. But more importantly, I can sense that you are in danger. They plan to use you as bait to force me into their trap." Through their mental connection, Ben could feel the depth of Ember's concern for his safety. The dragon would rather face capture than allow harm to come to the human boy, who had shown such kindness and friendship. This realization filled Ben with determination to find a way to help his friend escape, rather than being the reason for Ember's downfall. Captain Stone had recovered from the bright flash and was now studying Ben with calculating eyes. "So the boy has some kind of translation artifact as well. This expedition keeps getting more profitable. Secure him in the transport ship while we finish preparing the capture nets." As the hunters moved to carry out their leader's orders, Ben felt the pendant's power flowing through him more strongly than ever before. He could sense not just Ember's thoughts, but the emotions and intentions of every living creature in the area. The crystal around his neck had somehow activated the same empathic abilities that made Ember so special, creating a bridge of understanding between their two species that the ancient prophecy had foretold. Inside the hunter's transport ship, Ben sat quietly in his restraints while focusing all of his attention on the telepathic connection with Ember. The pendant's power had grown stronger over the past hour, and he could now sense not only his dragon friend's thoughts, but also the locations of every creature within several miles of the ruins. What he discovered through this expanded awareness gave him hope for the first time since his capture. Ember. Ben thought as clearly as he could. The shadow wolves you drove away from the settlement haven't actually left this area. They've been watching and waiting in the deep forest about 2 miles north of here. I think they're curious about you. Not afraid like you thought. Through their mental link, Ben felt Ember's surprise at this revelation. Are you certain, young friend? I believed my show of dragonfire had convinced them to seek hunting grounds elsewhere. I can sense their emotions now, just like you can, Ben explained. They're not afraid of you anymore. They're interested. I think they recognize that you're different from other dragons, and they want to understand why you protected the humans instead of joining them for hunting. This new information changed everything about their situation. Ben quickly shared his developing plan through their telepathic connection, and he felt Ember's growing excitement as the possibilities became clear. The pendant around the dragon's neck began to glow more brightly, as if responding to their shared determination and hope. Meanwhile, Captain Stone and her hunters were growing impatient with their prey's refusal to emerge from the blocked cave system. They had expected the empathic dragon to surrender immediately once they captured the human boy, but hours had passed without any sign of cooperation. The energy barriers sealing the cave entrances showed no signs of being tested or challenged from within. Perhaps this dragon is not as soft-hearted as our intelligence suggested, muttered one of the hunters as he checked his capture equipment. For the third time, Captain Stone frowned at this possibility. Her reputation and profit margins depended on the accuracy of her information about dragon behavior patterns. Give it more time, she ordered. No dragon with emotional attachments to other species can resist the sound of a distressed ally for very long. But Ben was no longer distressed, and Ember was no longer trapped. Through their mental connection, they had been coordinating with allies that the hunters never could have anticipated. The shadow wolves had been moving closer throughout the day, intrigued by the telepathic communications they could sense but not understand. Other creatures had also responded to the pendant's growing power, including the tunnel rabbits that Ember had rescued weeks earlier, and even some of the farm animals from the settlement below. As the sun began to set, painting the ruins in shades of gold and orange, the hunters finally got the dramatic confrontation they had been waiting for, but it was nothing like what they had expected or prepared to handle. Ember burst from the ancient temple's main entrance, not the blocked cave system where the hunters had been focusing their attention. The dragon had found an old passage that connected the underground chambers to the temple's upper levels, a route that the hunters' hasty survey had missed entirely. But Ember was not alone, and the dragon was not surrendering. Shadow wolves emerged from the forest like flowing darkness, moving in perfect coordination with the great dragon above them. The tunnel rabbits had undermined the hunters' equipment with their extensive burrowing network, causing several crucial devices to topple and malfunction. Even the farm animals from the settlement had somehow broken free from their pens and were creating chaos by stampeding through the hunters' carefully arranged trap. Captain Stone stared in amazement as creatures that should have been natural enemies worked together with impossible coordination. How is this possible? She demanded, raising her weapon toward the approaching dragon. Ben's voice rang out across the clearing as Ember landed gracefully near the transport ship. It's possible because friendship is stronger than fear, and understanding is more powerful than force. Ember taught me that, and now I can share that lesson with anyone willing to learn. The pendant around Ember's neck was now blazing with light so bright that it could be seen clearly even in the gathering dusk. Through their telepathic link, Ben could feel the ancient artifact's full power awakening after centuries of dormancy. The prophecy was fulfilling itself through their unlikely friendship, proving that different species could indeed work together when guided by empathy and mutual respect. The hunters found themselves surrounded but not attacked. Instead of violence, they faced something much more unsettling: the disappointed judgment of creatures they had planned to exploit. The shadow wolves growled softly but made no aggressive moves. The farm animals blocked escape routes without causing harm. Even the smallest tunnel rabbits positioned themselves where they could trip anyone who tried to run. You have a choice, Ember said to Captain Stone, the dragon's voice carrying clearly across the clearing. You can continue on this path of capturing and selling intelligent creatures, or you can learn a better way to make your living among the stars. Dragons don't make deals with humans, Captain Stone replied, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. This dragon does, Ben said firmly as Ember helped him down from the transport ship. Because this dragon knows that every species has something valuable to offer. and every individual deserves the chance to choose their own destiny. As if summoned by the pendant's blazing light, 3 more dragons appeared in the evening sky. Ben recognized them from Ember's descriptions as members of the Dragon Council, the same authority that had exiled his friend for being too different and too caring. They landed near the ruins with expressions of stern disapproval that quickly changed to amazement as they observed the scene before them. The eldest of the 3 dragons, a magnificent creature with scales like polished silver, approached Ember with obvious confusion. "We came expecting to find you weakened by association with lesser species," the elder said slowly. "Instead, we find you stronger and more confident than ever before. How do you explain this transformation?" Ember stood tall and proud, with Ben at the dragon's side and allies from multiple species arranged in a protective circle around them. "I explain it through the wisdom contained in this pendant, honored elder. The human boy Ben has unlocked its true message, and we have learned that different does not mean lesser. Strength comes not from standing alone, but from building bridges between worlds." The pendant pulsed with gentle light as Ben stepped forward to address the Dragon Council directly. His fear was completely gone, replaced by the confidence that came from knowing he was speaking ancient truths that needed to be heard. "The prophecy says that understanding between species will make everyone stronger and wiser. Ember didn't become weak by caring about others. Ember became the first dragon in centuries to discover what real power looks like." The silver-scaled elder studied the scene for a long moment, taking in the cooperation between natural enemies and the obvious respect that all the creatures showed toward the exiled dragon. "Perhaps," the elder said thoughtfully, "it is the council that has been weak, clinging to old fears instead of embracing new possibilities." Captain Stone and her hunters were released unharmed but empty-handed, their equipment confiscated and their licenses revoked by authorities who had been monitoring their illegal activities. The Shadow Wolves accepted Ember's invitation to establish their territory in the deep forests, where they could hunt wild game without threatening the peaceful farming community. The tunnel rabbits returned to their burrows with the satisfaction of having helped protect their rescuer. As the Dragon Council prepared to return to the Crystal Peaks, they extended a formal invitation for Ember to come home and share the lessons learned on Haven's Rest. But Ember declined politely, choosing instead to remain on the world where friendship had first taken root. "This is where I belong now," Ember told the council members. "Not because I was exiled, but because I have found my true purpose here. The pendant's prophecy speaks of bridging worlds, and I can do that best by staying where different species have learned to work together." Ben smiled up at his dragon friend with pure happiness. "Besides, I still have lots more of the pendant to translate. I think there are instructions for teaching other dragons and humans how to build the same kind of friendship we have." The ancient ruins became a place of learning and cooperation, where visitors from many worlds came to study the successful integration of different species. Ember served as both guardian and teacher, while Ben grew up to become a translator and ambassador, who helped other unlikely friendships take root across the galaxy. The pendant continued to glow softly around Ember's neck, its prophecy fulfilled but its power still growing, as more creatures discovered that understanding could triumph over fear, and that the greatest strength came from hearts open to the wonder of friendship across the stars.